Welcome to March 19th, 2021 Virtual Policy and Action Update. I'm Emily Ruddick, Executive Director of Mass Creative, and I'm joined by Mass Creative's Director of Engagement and Organizing, G. Quash. And we're going to start actually this morning acknowledging what happened in Atlanta this week, where 8 people were murdered, motivated by an anti-Asian racist hate crime. And just to set a moment aside and acknowledge that racism in America is an issue we are all dealing with. It is not new. Racism against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders is something that has gone on for generations. And in the last year, thanks to increased rhetoric, racist rhetoric, we have seen an increase in hate crimes to those who identify or are identified as Asian American or Pacific Islander. The Stop Asian Hate group actually just released a study, and in part what they're doing is they're collecting reports of hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. One of the really troubling facts that links to this week's hate crime and murders is that women who identify or are identified as Asian Americans are twice as likely to be attacked or to both verbally and physically. And we need to hold that and think about that as part of our responsibility as a cultural and creative community that wants to center and hold and care for our communities. There are 2 resources that we've included in the chat. One is a town hall that's being led this Thursday that a number of organizations in Massachusetts that work for and work with Asian American and Pacific Islander communities in Massachusetts are sponsoring. I also want to remind us to care for our leaders, our BIPOC leaders of color, and organizations that specifically serve or hold cultural traditions that embrace the diversity of the country and of Massachusetts, and that this might be a moment to just hold them close and check in with them, not in a, and support their work. So this is an ongoing work that we are all engaged in, and we want to hold that piece of work as well. So thank you all for being part of that progress. I'm going to start reporting on things that are happening on the federal level. So 2 weeks ago, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act into law. It's a $1.9 trillion relief bill. And the slides that follow kind of outline what's included. I want to make a big ploy and link up the fact that there is going to be $8.1 billion in aid delivered to the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as local municipalities. That money is going to be distributed. And this is where we, working with Senator Kennedy of Lowell, identified where we want to see the COVID-19 Cultural Economy Relief Program be funded from. So this is the Rebuild the Commonwealth's Cultural Futures Act that we've been advocating for, and I know many of you have been working on with us. So this is an exact point of contact. This would be the money that we would want to make sure we would want to see funneled into this relief fund. So far, we've had close to 700 folks use our Action Alert email system to reach out to lawmakers. Our goal is to get to at least 1,000. So if everyone on this call, if you haven't already, please feel free to use that tool. It's really helpful. We've updated it so legislators who've already co-sponsored the bill will get a really pleasant thank you note and encourage them to continue to be champions for our arts and culture in Massachusetts. Those that haven't will get an equally respectful and kind message urging them to co-sponsor it. But in addition, share this with 3 of your friends. If we can just sort of ripple this effect, we can reach that 1,000 advocate goal. If you run an organization or have audiences and an email list, this is the time. We really want to make sure that the legislature hears loud and clear that this is the bill that the creative community in Massachusetts supports wholeheartedly. You'll also see that there was money included in the American Rescue Plan Act for the National Endowment and for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, as well as IMLS. These are not part of their annual budget. This is COVID relief specific dollars that are going to be distributed. So we will see how our state agencies decide to distribute that money from the portion that they receive. Next, just to take a little look further at this, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, AKA the Save Our Stages bill, there was 1.25 billion added to that fund, which is great. There was also a language fix that allows applicants to apply for a second round PPP and then a a Shuttered Venue Operator Grant. Prior, you had to actually attest in your Shuttered Venue Operator Grant work, and then also in your PPP, that you weren't going to apply for both. This is a language fix. Now, we still need to get guidance. The Small Business Administration still needs to actually release the official guidance that says that, and then we should see the banks in their applications update that data or update that question, but that is in the bill. So just so you know. The other thing I want to uplift is that on April 20th, the Small Business Development Center Network is going to hold a workshop on the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant program and the application process. Knock wood, and based on everything that I'm hearing, by that time, the application process should be known. So this is I urge you to attend this if you have questions. This is going to be a great resource for all of us, and please share it with your networks. Another piece of the American Rescue Plan Act is that it extended unemployment assistance, both for full-time workers who have been laid off, as well as contractor gig workers, 1099 workers, through September 6th of 2021. And there was more money added to the Paycheck Protection Program. There is increased forgiveness from the feds for nonprofits that self-insure. And then there's a specific amount of money that was set aside for education, and it's broken up into sort of these three uses. We've put on our website a sort of more detailed summary that also links to additional resources. So that's in the chat now, and hopefully that is helpful for you as you are unpacking that legislation and that law. The other thing, and literally guys, this is so crazy. This is so kismet, right? So this morning, 10 minutes before I got on this call, I got an email about this. So Mass Creative is part of a large coalition called Put Creative Workers to Work. And what we've been working on, frankly, for the last 12 months is policy proposals and efforts to make sure that creative workers are included and are included in thinking about work programs, thinking about how to use creative workers to deal with public health communications. We've seen some examples in Massachusetts, both the North Shore CDC, as well as this really cool program that just started in Springfield with their cultural district, and the Community Music School of Springfield, which is about employing artists to help build trust for vaccines among communities in Springfield. So that's a really cool project that's happening. But this effort is a national effort, and there's a big ask that's right now that we need your help with. So the Biden administration is putting their Build Back Better recovery plan in development, right? And we want to make sure that there is specific money included for the creative economic recovery. So $20 billion is the ask. So this morning, Americans for the Arts did a 13-tweet Twitter thread that also tags a number of folks who are involved in that process. You'll see in the chat, we've linked to that. So retweet that as many times as you think is necessary. And then also we've linked to a letter template that you can use to submit to the Biden administration, urging them to really take seriously the needs of the creative economy in this recovery plan. This is happening now, and we want to make sure that we are working before it gets to Congress in this moment. So this is a fresh off the presses action alert for you to take. I'm going to move to the state. So I think many of us saw the other day that Governor Baker announced we are officially going to move forward with phase 4, step 1 on March 22nd. I've outlined a number of places where that reopening progress will intersect with the cultural and creative communities. I also just want to acknowledge that Mostly phase 4, step 1 is not for our creative and cultural venues. We're not going to see a lot of change there for the things that we do. And there are, 50% capacity limits that were added, that was increased in phase 3, step 2 are helpful, but they are not going to help many venues actually open and survive this. So I'm including this information, but just acknowledging that there's still more work to do in helping the Baker administration and the folks working on reopening to understand that the creative community needs an on-ramp to reopening. It's not like flipping a switch. And so those are the messages that we're sharing. And if you have the opportunity to advocate with the administration or with Secretary Keneally, those are things that we are talking about. The other piece is that there's no longer a travel order. There is a travel advisory, which changes what it's suggested now that folks quarantine if they're entering Massachusetts. And there are a couple of places groups that are exempted from that, including residents who are, returning from out of state with less than 24 hours, folks with a negative COVID test, and then travelers who are fully vaccinated. Now I'm going to move to the legislature. So last week, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means took the next step in the annual budget process. And if you remember, in January, Governor Baker released his budget proposal, and now it's up to the legislature to put together their budget proposals. So the first step is that the Joint Committee holds hearings, and they hear from all of the state agencies or any group that has a specific line item in the budget. And so this was the debut of our not so brand new executive director of the Mass Cultural Council, Michael J. Bobbitt. He testified at the hearing. He made a request. The agency is making a request for $20 million for fiscal year 22. That would be a $2 million increase from what the fiscal year 21 budget was, and a $4 million increase from what Governor Baker recommended in his January budget proposal. Simultaneously, the agency also released their 1 year of COVID-19 impact survey data. And you can see on the screen, not surprising to anyone who's on this call, there's a combined over 600 million in losses between nonprofit arts and cultural organizations, as well as lost income by individuals working in the field. So the good news is at that hearing, there was a lot of verbal support from Ways and Means Committee members for the Mass Cultural Council and acknowledging the significant losses that the field has sustained while simultaneously continuing to serve communities over the last year. So that is good, right? So what we expect now is that the next step is the House Ways and Means Committee is going to put together their version of the budget, and it will be debated on the House floor. So depending on what the recommendation is from the House Ways and Means Committee, if they come out with 20 million, we get to send a lot of thank you letters and acknowledge and tell legislators how much we support, representatives, how much we're delighted to see that number included. If it's not at 20 million, we expect that a member, an arts champion in the House, will submit an amendment to increase it to 20 million at least. And then we will need to work to urge our legislators to co-sponsor that bill. And the trick of this is the more co-sponsors you have, the more likelihood that they will really take that seriously and include that increase in the budget. So we are continuing with, I would say, a aerobic amount of advocacy this season. And we will share updates as that goes along. The other thing that happened this week is that Speaker Mariano announced that there is now a House Federal Stimulus and Census Oversight Committee. It's going to be chaired by Dan Hunt, and the vice chair is John Barrett. Dan Hunt is out of Dorchester, and John Barrett is out of North Adams. So you've got basically both sides of the Commonwealth in leadership for this committee, and you can also see the members who are included in this. This group will be an important part of that conversation about how that federal stimulus money is spent. And so we're going to start working and figuring out what bills they may take up, how they're going to proceed in their work, and continue to share closely how we can engage with those committee members, with all of you. We've included a link in the chat just so you can see who the members are, and maybe you can bookmark that as they take up bills and potentially schedule hearings. And then finally, I'm just going to remind us all that United Advocacy works, right? So over the last year, as many of you have, I'm sure you've been taking stock of what the last 12 months have meant. And for Mass Creative, for our team, what we've sort of really been dramatically impressed by is the amount of passion, partnership, and engagement from advocates across the Commonwealth on the issues that we care about related to the creative and cultural community. And that's why we exist, to help support and build the voice of advocates across the Commonwealth. But we can't do that without your support. So we are right now in our membership drive. So if you run an arts and cultural organization and you think to yourself, have we renewed our membership to Mass Creative? Feel free to drop me a line and I'll let you know real quick. Or if you think to yourself, we've never been members of Mass Creative, today's the day. Please do. In the chat, we just included a link that you can quickly and easily do that renewal or join. This is part of how we keep our work going. And frankly, it is incredibly impactful when we can talk with decision makers and say, there are over 400 arts and cultural organizations that are members of Mass Creative, and that help us decide the direction of the organization and support a larger advocacy effort for arts and culture in Massachusetts. That their ears perk up. So your help in that regard is really, really important. Finally, our next, my goodness, this year feels like it actually is flying by. So our next policy and action update will be April 2nd. I am really excited to continue to share updates, and something tells me we will have a lot to share even in 2 weeks. But if in the meantime you have a question, both G and I are always available and are ready to help you out and help direct you or answer questions or connect you with the person who actually has the answers, because gosh knows we don't always have them. So thank you so much. Have wonderful weekends. I hope you all get some time to get outside. And thank you so much. Thanks for your support.